and welcome to the Hybrid School Builders Podcast. I am your host, Rebecca Foley, and I am so glad you are joining me today. I am a fellow grassroots founder who is hoping to make your journey toward founding a sustainable hybrid school a little bit easier. If you are dreaming of starting a hybrid school, or perhaps you've already gotten started, you are in the right place. Join me as we dive into real stories, practical tips, and hard-won lessons that I have learned to help you launch and grow your program with confidence. Remember, building a hybrid school is not just about creating a business or creating jobs. It's not even about just serving the children who attend the program. It's literally about reshaping the landscape of education, and we can do that one community, one entrepreneur, and one program at a time. Hey guys, so I wanted to follow up on that last episode because it got me thinking a little bit more about this topic. And I just wanted to talk about leadership. I think that's probably the right word. And as a founder, you are finding yourself having to be a leader as soon as you get any sort of teammates, okay? And if you're a group of people listening to this, or you're listening to it and you have one or two or three other people who are helping you with this project, you're still going to need leadership. You're probably going to need leadership even more in understanding what it really is and what it's not, all right? Now, I'm not going to pretend that I'm some big expert on this. There's a lot of good talks you can listen to. There's a lot of good resources on this. But I wanted to just share with you a few things that I have learned because of not really understanding this idea or having a lot of experience in it from the beginning and kind of just building something from the ground up. You're doing it with passion. You're doing it with a vision. You're just grateful for any kind of help you can get. You're not in some chief executive position that you interviewed and got hired for, and you've got a salary and benefits. You're not in a position like that. You're not given a title. You're not recognized. If you've been in a position like that, you probably have already learned a bit about leadership. But again, it can be a bit different when you're already kind of plugged into a machine that's already running, culture that's already there. All of these pieces, if they're already there, it looks a little different. I think the principles are probably still the same, but it can look a little different because you're not trying to build the leadership and the culture while you're building the entire organization, all right? So that brings me to my next point, which is that I think that a good chunk of leadership is probably building culture, okay? The other thing, and I'll expand upon these two things, is enabling the people around you to do what they do best, trusting them with it, delegating, accountability, teamwork. But there's this balance between teamwork and delegation, between trust and support, okay? And then all of that feeds in a circle around and around with the culture that you're building, right? So as you're building out an organization and you're building out the culture, I think one of the best things that you can do is you can start from the beginning with a culture of, and I'm going to introduce my proprietary, I don't know if I really came up with this, but I think I did, 3 H's, which are honor, humility, and humor, okay? And I was thinking about this topic one day, and I was working through some materials, and I came up with those 3 words kind of accidentally. They all started with H. I think that those 3 words kind of encapsulate the kind of culture that you want to build, as well as the attitude that you want to have with the people around you. And we all have different personalities, and some of us are very assertive, and some of us are very passive, and some of us have all kinds of ideas, and we talk all the time, and others of us are just very quiet, and we're listeners, and all in between, okay? But I think if we are able to build a culture where we empower the people around us because we know that we're not good at all the things, okay? So this kind of gets into the idea of honor, all right? You see someone else and you say, you know what? They are really good at that. And I am not going to be stingy with my praise of them or with my trust of them. If it's something that I feel like they do really well, I want to empower them to be able to do that job well. I want to trust them. I want to delegate to them. And I want to let them know that they're important to the team, okay? I'm not going to try to do their job for them. I'm not going to micromanage them. I'm going to make sure that they understand that they're important to the team. And if you've got good people around you, they're going to probably step up to the task, okay? Because everyone wants to know that they are important to the team, that what they're doing is important, and that they're part of the big picture. They want to know that you need them, okay? I think that is part of building that culture of honor. Now, a culture of honor also means stepping into who you are and doing it confidently. Okay, this was something that I think that I struggled with for a little bit personally, just between me and you. There were some things I didn't really think this consciously, like I think I'm good at this, but it was stuff that I realized I was the only person taking care of some of it, but I would kind of maybe wait for permission or wait for feedback or propose an idea. And if I didn't get the feedback that I was looking for, I'd feel like maybe I'm not supposed to do that. And instead of just being like, well, no, nobody else in the room is seeing this or nobody else is doing this, so I'm going to lead this with confidence that this is what I am bringing to the table. It doesn't make me better than anybody else. It just means that I'm confident that I'm a piece of the puzzle that's important, just like the person next to me is a piece of the puzzle that's important. And I'm going to step into who I am confidently, not arrogantly, not running people over, doing it very considerately, including other people in the discussion, of course, but you're doing it realizing that maybe you're bringing something to the table that other people don't have. If you listen to the last episode, that example that I talked about being a big ideas, possibilities person really helps you be an entrepreneur, but you also need those detail people. Okay, well, if you have those two people sitting at a table and you're planning your programming, or maybe you're having a board meeting, or you're just doing your daily work together and you have the big ideas, entrepreneurial possibilities person sitting next to the details, all of the little things person, you can end up grading on each other if you don't understand, okay, we need to honor each other, but I also need to honor myself as well as the person next to me, okay? So you're building that culture by being very open with your discussions, by having a healthy conflict. Patrick Lencioni talks about this a lot. Brené Brown talks about trust and vulnerability. Okay, these resources are really important to not leave a meeting and be like, I wonder why I didn't get any feedback. Or that person said that thing and I don't really think they understood what I was saying. Or, I didn't really understand what they were saying, but I didn't want to ask. That kind of culture can end up being one where you're all a little afraid and you don't really understand and don't want to step on any toes. If you feel like you're stepping on toes all the time, that's a time to step back and say, hold on a second. Let's make sure that we're building a culture of trust and vulnerability in a good way. Vulnerability, I guess I'm using that the way Brené Brown uses it. Building a culture where we trust each other. We trust each other with our vulnerabilities. If someone is struggling with something, whether it's like personal or they're not getting paid enough, or, they can't find babysitting for their kids or whatever, or they just feel like they're really not good at this particular thing, that they can share that. And instead of you being like, oh man, you can't do your job, you're like, okay, well, how can we figure this out? Like, I really need you in this position. I really value how good you are at this. If it's something that they're not good at, giving them encouragement to say, okay, well, let's see, we're going to try to fill this for you as quickly as we can. Maybe I can do it. Maybe we can hire someone to do it. But how can we fill this gap? But if it's something they are good at and they just have circumstances beyond their control, maybe that's making it difficult for them to, do all the things that need to be done, especially when you're first getting started with a business and like you kind of everybody's doing a lot of things and you're kind of learning as you go. Being able to say, okay, but you're so valuable to this team. You're really bringing something to the table that is so important. And I really want to make sure that you're equipped to do this. So if you have a challenge, let's brainstorm together because I really value you. Okay. And you walk that line between like making sure that the person, and this is of course, assuming that this person is committed to the vision and they want to be here, right? If they're telling you that, well, I can't find babysitting, so I think I might have to quit my job and they don't even want to be there, then you have a different problem. But if they're like, if they're really committed and they're just struggling with something, or you are, right? You want to be able to come to them and say, man, I am doing all of this stuff and I am just really struggling to balance it all. And I'm really having a hard time with this and this. Can you help me like brainstorm how we can rearrange this or how I can get some more support here or whatever? And you just you can trust each other with your vulnerabilities. and you can trust each other with the value that you each bring. Okay. This is all part of honoring each other. It's also part of that humility. So if you think about that word humility, you're able to look at yourself and say, I'm not going to try to do your job. Like I know I'm not great at it. I know you're good at it. And so I'm not going to try to do it for you, or I'm not going to, I'm here for you. I can support you. I will help you brainstorm, but I'm not going to like try to do your job, because you don't want someone doing that to you, right? So you're having that humility to realize that even though you might be the director, okay, or you might end up with a title that makes you like maybe somebody's boss or something at some point, right? We can talk about titles some other time. But you might end up in this position of being a leader, but you also have that humility to know that these people around you can fill in areas where you need them. You're not trying to be all of the things, all right? I think that is something that some people will struggle more with that than others. It depends maybe on your personality. I think some of the people who maybe if you feel like you have to fix all of the problems, if you're someone who's like, I need to fix it, I don't want to bother anybody. If you tend to be like that, I don't want to ask for help. If you tend to be like that, you may find yourself trying to like rescue everyone all the time and your heart is in the right place. You really want to be helping, but it can almost turn on itself where instead of realizing that you can't do it all and realizing that like you need these people around you, you almost without knowing it kind of are the opposite of humble, because you try to be all things to all people, but you can't be, and you're not really acknowledging that, okay, to yourself, because you just want to fix it all. You don't want to bother anybody, and you don't want them to be burned out and all of that. And Patrick Lencioni, I think he calls the enabler, which I feel like that word has a negative connotation, and he doesn't use it in a negative way. It's a gift that people have where they're able to come alongside people and say, what do you need? Let me help you. Okay, it's one of his 6 working geniuses that one of the words that he's uses for that. But he also says in one of his podcast episodes about this, that these particular people, one of the negative sides of that, or one of the, I don't want to say negative necessarily, but like one of the, there's a negative side to all of them if they go too far in one direction, just like anything, right? One of the downsides of an enabler type is that they can burn themselves out because they're always trying to help everybody, and they're always trying to be there for everybody, and they don't know how to say, oh, I can't do that, or I really need you to do that. Like, I don't want to be responsible for that because you're the one who's good at that. They just want to go and save the day all the time. Okay, which is an excellent intention, extremely valuable on a team. But like anything, if it's taken too far and it's not balanced out, and you're not humble in realizing that you might overdo it with your helping, it can turn into either burnout or almost a form of arrogance when you think that you can hold everything together by yourself when you can't. You need other people around you, okay? And, I think he even says this in his podcast. He's like, don't be offended, people who are enablers. So I'll give you another example. Somebody who's, an ideas person, which is me. You get someone who's an ideas person and they're always coming up with ideas all the time. And if they don't learn how to move into the next steps of all right, we're done brainstorming, we're done problem solving. Now what we're doing is we're moving past that. We're done with the ideas, and we're going to move into discerning the ideas, to use his language, and, then finishing things out, going through those steps of finishing things out to actually finishing one of these ideas and actually making it happen and making sure that it's a good idea and finishing it to the end. Okay. So it can happen with any of them. I think a tenacity person might be prone to this too, because they're one of the end letters there, the kind of people who actually see things through to the end. They can also burn themselves out because they're the ones who finish things right through to the end, and they stick it out right to the end, but then they can burn themselves out. Or sometimes things get dumped on them unfairly by maybe the ideas people or the people who are real good at the beginning of the process. And they, like me, they kind of brush under the rug well, we'll figure that out later. And then they try to, but then when they get down to it, it's the details person, the tenacity person, who is actually thinking about every single thing and making sure that it gets done. They're the ones who stick it out and stay late and do all of the things. Okay, so they can also get burned out. Anyway, All that language I think is very valuable. And that brings me to humor. And I think, like, if you listen to Patrick Lencioni's podcast on Working Genius, like, they're always laughing about all of this and they're using the vocabulary. It's kind of fun to listen to it. And I think building that kind of a culture where right from the beginning, you're educating your team, you educate yourself first, and then anybody around you, maybe you listen to that podcast, maybe you do the test that's on his website. Maybe you have a meeting that's just about teams and teamwork, as far as like, what kind of person are you? Like, what do you get really frustrated by? And well, here's what I get frustrated by, or, oh, I've noticed this about you, that whenever this happens, you're always the one who sees that. Or whenever we have a problem, you're always the one who comes up with the solutions. Or, you're really good at discerning whether this is a good idea. You ask all the right questions, right? And you like build that culture where you are able to honor each other in it. And in the process of that, it's much easier to bring that humor in, okay? Because then when somebody comes along and you're sitting in a meeting and, something comes up and that ideas person, which is me, Patrick Lencioni is one too. He laughs about that on his podcast. They're like, oh, maybe we should do this. And maybe we could do that. Or I got an idea for this. And like, they start coming up with all these ideas. Well, because you've already had these conversations, because you've already used the language, because you've already honored each other, you're all valuable to the team. You know that everyone else thinks you're valuable to the team. You know you're needed, right? Now you can bring the humor in and be like, oh, you're being your ideas person again. We don't need ideas right now. So I guess the example I gave, you kind of are looking for ideas if you have a problem. Thank you that you're here. You're the ideas person, but let's take your ideas hat off and toss it to our discerner. We're going to talk about which of those ideas is the best one to do because we need to make a decision and finish it. Okay. And you kind of like laugh through these things, right? You can kind of like laugh at each other's eccentricities, and you all do it because you have built a culture of honor and humility where you need each other. Nobody thinks they can hold everything together by themselves. You're vulnerable with each other. If you're struggling, somebody's there to help you, but they also value you. They need you. They're not trying to run everything on their own. And you're just building that culture where all of you are necessary for the team. Okay. And I think any team, you think about a sports team. I never played in a sports team in my life. I'll tell you, I guess I did in gym class, but nothing super official. But even I know this, right? And if you get a one player who thinks that they're going to carry the team, they're going to, get all the goals, they're going to have the ball all the time or whatever, they are not a good team player. They're not the person who you want on the team because they think that they're going to hold everything together, and they either completely wear themselves out or nobody really likes them much because they won't ever pass the ball. They won't ever acknowledge that they need people around them, okay? But if you have that sort of teamwork where all of you have your parts, you're all important, you don't do somebody else's job, you all share, you all honor each other, and that's the kind of culture that you want to build. You do that right from the beginning. You take the time to do that. If you're a nonprofit, you even do it with your board. You have to be realistic with a board about how much time commitment they have, but a board should be able to have conversations with some knowledge of each other a little bit. It can save you hours and hours of time over the course of a year of board meetings. Even if you're only meeting every couple months, you got a group of people, they may not know each other at all. You can save yourself a lot of time by actually putting some time up front to use some of this language, to talk about some of these ideas, so that as you're discussing things, you can say, hey, you're the finisher here. You haven't said anything yet. What do you think about this? Like, what are we not seeing? Or, he's the ideas person. He can help us problem solve. Or you can say, we're not there right now. We have to move into this part. And you can just use that language so that you can all have a productive meetings. And the other really important thing is being able to have healthy conflict in the sense that you ask the questions. Or if somebody is being maybe difficult or they're not talking, it can go in either direction. They're not saying anything, not participating, or maybe they're being too overbearing, and it's either on a staff meeting or it's a board meeting or whatever. And you're in this environment and conversations are happening or they're not happening, or somebody says something and then everybody, maybe they don't listen to the person, and then the conversation just keeps moving and the person's like, wait, I just said that, nobody's listening. Like all these dynamics can develop over time or they can develop quickly, depending on the dynamics in the room. And if that happens and there's no ability to step back and say, wait a minute, guys, we already talked about this before. You would be able to say something that's kind of difficult sounding, right? The sooner you say these things, the better. You don't let it fester. You have to be able to have that kind of like little bit of conflict where you can say, well, actually, yeah, I really always feel like, I'm shut down when I talk, or I feel like when I say something, I just get ignored, or I don't know, you guys all ran away with that idea and I didn't really feel like we talked about it enough, but I didn't really say anything. This kind of stuff, like it happens all the time in meetings, even with just 3 or 4 people. So if you can build that culture and you have that leadership where somebody steps in and says, oh, hold on, and you notice those things and you say, let's talk about this. Let's take a few minutes and talk about this. Everyone, be honest, okay? We're going to be kind, we're going to be respectful, but we're going to be honest. And we're going to say what we're thinking. It goes so far to building a healthy dynamic with the team. And I think leadership is being able to be that person who pulls things along in that direction, cultivates that culture, who honors the people around you, who speaks life and empowerment into the people around you, but also walks fully into who you are, but maintains that humility of taking correction, or if someone comes to you and says, hey, you get a little overbearing sometimes with this, and it's kind of been bothering me, and I just wanted to say something about it. You can be like, oh, you're probably going to groan. And it might sting, but you're able to like step back and like, please, I'm really sorry. Thank you for pointing that out to me. And you just build that culture, okay? And it takes some emotional maturity to do that. But this can be a good place to build that and to learn that. And it will trickle into your teachers and your staff. It trickles into your families. It trickles into the classroom even when you have that culture that you're building in your school, okay? So there's my little spiel on leadership and teams, and I hope you find it useful if you're working with anybody at all, which you probably will be at some point, even if you are not right now. I hope you can take that into the future and think about it yourself and bring it into your groups and your dynamics as you build. It goes so far to building a good, healthy culture and making you a good leader. Thanks so much for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure you check out the resources I am developing at startahybridSchool.com. Send me an email anytime. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.